I'm going to go ahead and start the recording here. I know we have a few more minutes. We'll kind of wait for any stragglers. Before we jump right into our topics today, I have a few images up here. This is what you see over here on the right. This is an IP500 V2 chassis or V1. You really can't tell just looking at the front. But up here at the top we have a couple of expansion modules. One looks like an analog module. The other, I believe, is a digital expansion module. This is a newer model phone. This is the 9641G. I think it has a gigabit port in the back. If you needed to attach, if you had gigabit running to the desktop, you could daisy chain your PC off the back and still get that throughput. Also has a color touch screen. It's has applications such as weather. Maybe you could have some stock tickers on there as well. This is a smartphone that's running the mobility app. And this off to the right here is a iPad. I think that's an iPad. Maybe it's some other device running Communicator, or the old, it used to be called Flare. On 9.1 now it's called Communicator. Communicator also replaces Softphone in the release, in 9.1 release. I stole these images off the internet, but I think what this is depicting back here is the Scopia. We have a video solution that attaches to or integrates with the IP office, so you can have multi-point video. People can dial in and listen to each other on an audio bridge as well. It's pretty neat. We'll wait a couple more minutes here in case we have any Cinco de Mayo people straggling in this morning. This is good. I see some regulars out there. I also see some new names, so that's always good. Alright guys, well, it's 11 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Paul Fragway. I am an IP Office systems engineer. I have supported the IP Office for 6 years and been with Agility Communications Group for 3 years. Currently, right now, I'm doing a lot of upgrades to the newer release, so if you're on an older release IP Office, your case will probably come through my hands, and we'll get you planned out and organized for any upgrades that take place. But also take care of support and do some of the installs. But anyway, that's who I am. Let's talk about today's topic. We're going to be covering two items. We're going to talk about web self-administration, and we're going to talk about web manager. Okay, web self-administration, what's needed for that? It's a new feature. It is a standard feature with release 9.1. Okay, users can use the web admin portal to manage their personal configuration or their settings. But the system admin has to enable this on a per user basis, and there's different objects that the user can log into this portal and make changes to, and those objects can be, the user can either have read access to them or they can have write access to them. Also, it requires the IP Office V2 chassis, which is a prerequisite as well for release 9.1. So what I mean by that is you can't be on 9.1 and have any other chassis than a 500 V2. Avaya's finally cut the line there. They're going to get rid of, moving forward, you're not going to be allowed to use the older chassis. Doesn't require, web self-administration doesn't require any additional licenses, so you don't have to purchase power user licenses. You don't have to have any additional expense there. If you're on 9.1, you get self-administration. It's a standard feature. We're also today going to talk about Web Manager. What Web Manager is, it's a browser-based management tool that runs on most of our standard browsers. The benefit to that is there's no Windows OS required. So if you're an entire Mac shop, you don't have to have a special PC set aside that just runs Manager. You can run it off your Safari browser. You just web into the IP of the IP Office, and you can make changes. It allows you to configure users, your hunt groups, directories, extensions, auto attendance, incoming call routes, those different items, and we'll obviously go through it and show it to you guys. These are the supported browsers. These are the most common ones everybody uses. Nothing new there. Here's a look at the older IP Office. So some of you guys may be familiar with the 400. That is really getting out of date now. Nothing wrong with it. Still works great. And it's been a workhorse, but a lot of the features that Avaya is rolling out, you're going to have to upgrade to the V2 chassis. And again, here's another picture of it. But we need to look at the back plane of this chassis to kind of get an idea of what the differences are. And I have that, I have that broken out here. You can see at the top, basically there's 4 slots where you can put in base cards depending on what's needed. But it's the back that really where you notice the difference. So here's a V1. This middle image here is a V1 chassis. The reason I know that is I see this feature key slot. This slot's about the size of a credit card. So that card would slide in, has a little chip on it, and the purpose of that card is when Avaya issues a license, it matches up to that card. So it takes the card and the license to actually activate whatever feature that license is purchased for. Here you have power. There's some other ports that are on here. Sometimes we need to reset the box. I wouldn't recommend that unless we're involved, because that will reset the box. And it makes it, unless you're prepared to reset it, it makes it difficult to get it back. Here is an audio input. A lot of you guys use external music on hold, and that's where that device would plug in. Rarely do we use this DTE port. A lot of times it's to reset passwords that have been lost, and you have to physically plug in, run from a command line, run some commands to reset it. That's typically what I've always used it for, and that's very sparingly. Also, we have your LAN and WAN port. Okay. The WAN port inside of Manager, by the way, is going to be the LAN 2 tab, and we'll see that today. But on the physical device, you'll see it listed as WAN. However, when you're working inside of Manager, you'll see it as LAN 2, and this is where your expansion modules plug into. Okay. Now, the difference between the V1 chassis and the V2 chassis. The V2 chassis uses these system SD card slots. So the SD card itself actually can hold files and data on it. It's the same type of SD card you might use in the newer cameras today. So that card not only holds the firmware for the IP Office chassis itself, it would also hold firmware for your phones. So when you get an upgrade, your chassis can also be used as the file server, where in the past on the older chassis you had to have a separate, typically a Windows system that had TFTP or HTTP running on it that would push those files down to the phones every time there was an upgrade. But in these newer chassis, all that information is stored on the chassis itself, or actually on that SD card. So that's the benefit. But that SD card also allows for the two items that we're going to talk about today. It also runs the web interface for the self-administer site or portal, and also the web manager. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Okay, first thing I'm going to show you is the self-administer tool. Okay, and this is what it looks like. Now, just to clarify, the self-admin tool is aimed towards the user. So the idea is that the user themselves can come in here and make some changes, where in the past the system or the phone administrator would actually have to go in and have to make these changes for the user if they didn't have the correct buttons configured or those features. But let's go ahead and log in here with the user that I have. Oh, wrong password. There we go. All right. So here I'm logged in as myself, and this is what it looks like. These are the different items that I can change. I can come in here, I can change my name, okay? I can change the password that I use to log into different applications such as Communicator or Softphone. Also, this website here, the self-admin website, this is the password that would change that. This shouldn't be confused with your voicemail password. This is a separate password entirely. Obviously, we're in the United States. This password here is the one that you would use to log in to a separate phone. So if you're going to move from one phone to another on a digital station, you could use this password here to change that. Voicemail, also can make changes to that. We can turn it on, off, okay? We can change our voicemail password. We can also change the email address in which voicemail to emails go to. And then we can change how we want those to be delivered. We can turn voicemail to email off altogether. We can also set it to copy. So most stations are set to copy. And what copy is when I receive a phone call at my desk and I don't answer, someone leaves me a voicemail. Well, what will happen if I'm set to copy is I'll also receive an email with an attached WAV file. That's fine, but if I get used to always checking my voicemails in my emails, then what happens is my voicemail box on the system just tends to grow and grow and grow and grow because I have all of these old voicemails listed on the IP office. So what you can do if you find users that are stuck in that scenario, you may want to go and set them to forward. What forward is when they receive a voicemail, it doesn't keep it on the phone system. It just forwards it and sends it to their Outlook as a WAV attachment. And the next item here is alert. So a user could come into this self-admin portal and set the voicemails to just send an email to Outlook and say, "Hey, go to your phone, check your voicemail. You have a message there that you need to check." Okay. See, we already have a question here. Let's see if I can get to that. Yes, these options today are only on a V2 chassis. Yep, only on a V2 chassis. Okay, so let's move on. Do not disturb. A user can come in here. Let's say they're on vacation. Actually, do not disturb wouldn't be a good one for vacation, but let's say that they want to set their phone to do not disturb. Maybe they're not at their phone and it's just constantly ringing, bothering their coworkers around them. They could come to this website and they could set their do not disturb on. Okay. Also, they can easily configure their Do Not Disturb exception list. So what is the exception list? The exception list are users that can, or extensions and phone numbers that can pass through Do Not Disturb. So if I'm on Do Not Disturb, these two numbers right here would be able to call me. Okay, this is an internal extension, which happens to be Aaron's extension. And then this number right here, if I was on Do Not Disturb and received a call from that number, it would come through and actually ring my phone. Yes, there is a license. There was another question. Sorry, there is a license required to upgrade from from release X. Sorry, 8 to release 9.1. But if you're a support customer, that license is covered by Agility. So I hope that answers your question, Carlton. And we'll go over that at the very end as well. Mobility. What is mobility? Mobility is twinning. What is twinning? Twinning is when I receive a phone call at my desk phone. I also can set a second phone for that call to be presented to. So when that call initially comes in, it's going to ring my desk phone, and in this scenario, it'll ring my cell phone simultaneously. So I have the option. If I'm currently walking out of the office or I've left the office, I forgot to set my phone to forward. If I have twinning on, it rings at both locations. I can answer it on my cell phone and continue, walking out. Whereas forwarding, here's forwarding. Forwarding, call comes into my desk phone, then it never rings there. It only rings on the cell phone. And again, a user can come to this website, say they're on vacation, they forgot to set forwarding up, and they can come here, enable forwarding, okay, just like that if they already have the number there, and save it. As soon as they hit save, it's active. Personal directory. Users can come in here and set, this is, I guess today we call it personal directory. It used to be called speed dial. So on the newer sets, on the 9600 series sets, you would go into your contacts and you would find your personal directory. Lots of questions today. I like it. Yes, there is. It's very easy to set up users for call forward, Ralph. And basically what you can do is set them up a button, a call forward button. So if they need to set that up, they can press the button. If they don't, if you are on a V1 chassis and you cannot use this self-admin tool, the only other way that they could forward their calls themselves, if they're not in the office to press the button on their phone, would be to give them a power user license and deploy 1X portal, and then they could go in and set their calls to forward. But in here, back to the personal directory, you can just click on add. Okay, we need to add another speed dial. And then we just add the phone number in which we want speed dial to use. So in this case, we use 7 on this system to get an outside line, so 7. Okay, that's how easy it is to add that speed dial into the personal contacts. All right, and then button programming. In this case, most of your users, their buttons are going to be pretty static. They're not going to be making a lot of changes. However, this would be really useful for an admin who has responsibilities to multiple individuals. So what they usually do, they have a sidecar off to the right where they have all of the buttons, just lists and lists of buttons. And sometimes, especially today, these positions are changing quite a bit. So a user that is executive assistant who is managing, these 5 execs today, those executives may interchange quite a bit. So she's constantly having to go in and add different user buttons. So to do that, she could just, pick her new executive. It's going to be a user. And then it gives you a list of all the users on the system. So maybe she needs to see maybe she needs to see, let me unplug this phone here a second. Maybe she needs to see Brett, for example, as a user. And then we just put him in there. Okay? So now on her phone, she would have that 10th button there labeled as Brett. And what that button actually does, it allows her to see if the user is on the phone. It also allows for like one-touch transfer. So if she receives a phone call, she could hit that user button and boom, that call would go there. So it's easier for her to manage and quickly route calls for her extensions that she's constantly managing. So that's a quick rundown of the self-administer tool. Now all of these options, they can be set. Again, the PBX admin is going to have to set this or enable this for the first time use. And each of these can be set to either read only or to write. And that's what I want to show you now, is how we actually go in and set this up. So let me log out of here. That's that. And we had a question. Here's a side question. If I upgrade from IP Office V1 to V2, can I still use digital stations? Absolutely. All the phones that are working on a V1 chassis will still work with a V2 chassis. And those modular ports that were in the front that I kind of showed you, those just move over to the V2 chassis. Unless you have any legacy cards. Legacy cards have to go away, but few people have those. Alright, so this is the IP Office Web Manager tool. This is the second release. This has been around. I think it came out in 9.0. And basically, the 9.0 version was good, but it has a lot of improvements in 9.1, and it hasn't fully replaced the software manager that we install on our Windows systems, but it's getting close. We'll just log in here. Alright, here we are. So we're logged into Web Manager, and right off the bat it takes us to the dashboard. And the dashboard gives us a high-level view of what is in our system, what cards we have, what licenses we have, which is nice. So I can see here, this is a physical view of the front of the IP Office. And this is our lab at Agility, and we really only have 2 phones plugged into it now. And these are digital extensions, but you can see, I know that in this port right here, I have a phone plugged into it, a digital phone, and it's residing on extension 2010. I also have a phone plugged in here that's 2011. So just by hovering over it, I can see the assigned extensions. I know these aren't attached or plugged in, but I can see the the extension assignments on those ports. This right here is an analog card. Analog works a little different. Analog, we can't tell if anything's plugged in, and I know for a fact that there's nothing plugged into these ports, but analog isn't smart enough to tell the IP Office, hey, this is on, this is off. The IP Office just has it on. So anytime you plug into an analog port, you're going to get dial tone. Internal modules, these are the different cards that we have attached into, or actually installed into the chassis. We have a VCM32 card. A VCM card is a voice compression module. It's used often with IP sets, and basically compresses the packets, allows for those packets to traverse the network more efficiently and preserve voice quality. I can also see I have a Digital Station 8 card. That's going to be this card here. Allows me to attach digital phones. And then we have a Phone 8 card. This allows me to attach fax machines, analog polycoms, that type of thing. Here is my system feature card. This serial number is what all of your licensing authenticates to. So your card and the licenses that are purchased from Avaya, they have to be purchased against this card specifically. So if you were to ever just swap out a card, it would cause havoc on your system. All of those licenses are going to go invalid. This is the serial number of your chassis. Pretty basic information. System information. Here we can get IP information. IP address of the LAN interface. This is where your phones are going to register to in most scenarios. Here you notice the LAN 2. Remember at the beginning I was talking about the WAN port. So on the physical diagram we saw it labeled as WAN, but when you're inside of Manager or also this Web Manager, that's going to be your LAN 2 port. Okay, so we can see the IP address there. Also, I notice on the server mode, DHCP mode, it's set to server. So what that means is if a IP phone plugs into that port or a switch with an IP phone attached to it, that phone is going to receive an IP address. We can see we have Voicemail Pro. Backups are enabled. Here we can also see licenses. Essential Edition license. Every system that we sell has to have an Essential Edition license. Power user. We have 2 valid power user licenses. Voice networking channels. That allows us to connect this IP office to another IP office. Web collaboration. That was last month's Guru session. If you haven't seen it, log in to the website. Go check it out. There was some good information there with web collaboration, which is a new feature for release 9.1. Voicemail Pro ports. This is a software upgrade license we use to upgrade that box to release 9.1. We can also see here the power users. We have 2 assigned power users already on this system. Just kind of gives you a high-level view. The office worker, mobile user, teleworker, those types of users are kind of carried over from the old days of IP Office. Avaya would sell a teleworker license that had 5 or I don't know how many features it had, but it would give you a list of features. So if you were a teleworker user, you would get those features. But now let's say they work themselves into a bind because those teleworker users could not also get mobile user features. So you either had to have one or the other. So what they did to fix that was bring on the power user. So we just sell power user licenses, and what that does, power user license is comprehensive. It gives you all of the features that these others do, and honestly the price difference isn't that much, so it seems to be a better route to go. Here we can get a breakdown on the types of extensions. We have H323 extensions. These are going to be your typical IP extensions. Okay. We also have some digital extensions out there. And this is these are just the available ports, so not the physical phone. And then we also see we have 8 analog slots. These are hunt groups. We have 2 hunt groups. So in here, let's go and look at our users. I can go to call management. Let's do that again. Users. And here's a list of users. This is a lab system, so we really don't have a whole lot, but a typical install may have 100 plus, 200 plus users. So you would have to scroll page by page by page through here at the bottom. But you have a search feature up here. We could go to extension 2011. And I can just real quickly see that extension, who it's assigned to, a DID that is assigned to that user, which in this case, this user doesn't have one. Any hunt groups, he's in both of these hunt groups and his voicemail's on. But for this scenario, let's go ahead and let's create a new user. Okay. And we're going to create a user, and we're going to grant him web self-administration rights. And we'll create a new user here. How about Walter White? Password? Just give him 1234 for now. extension. How about 2018? Pretty sure that extension is available. And this account status, we want it enabled. What the account status does is it enables the applications this user may be using. Okay, it doesn't disable the extension. So, but if we did set this to disabled after he was already configured, his phone would still receive phone calls, but his applications such as Soft Console or Communicator, that type of applications would be disabled. And he's going to be a basic user for now. He doesn't have web collaboration. This X directory, that would exclude him from the directory of the phone. There's sometimes we create extensions that are for programming purposes, and we don't want them to show up in the corporate directory, so we would hide those. Alright, but you can see, if I set him to power user, see, it automatically enables all of these services, 1X Portal, Softphone, Communicator, just by assigning him that license. But in this case, we're just going to create him as a basic user. Okay. Hunt group, I can assign him different Hunt group memberships. Let's say he's going to be sales only, so we'll just put him in the sales group. Okay. User rights, we're not going to mess with any of that, so we'll go ahead and create that user. Alright, and here he is, right here, Walter White. Alright, we have other options that we can configure for this individual. Voicemail, obviously most users are going to need voicemail, so we'll give them a voicemail code. Okay. And most users are going to have an email address. And voicemail is on. Guys, this voicemail ringback, a lot of times people think that's a good idea, and we get calls a lot to turn it off, and they don't know how they turned it on. What that is when you receive a voicemail, your phone will keep calling you until you check the voicemail. And if you have mobility set or twinning or forwarding, it's going to call your cell phone as well. Just to give you a heads up there. There's very few scenarios where that's a useful. If you have an urgent on-call cell phone that you pass around, that might be a useful feature. But in this, and for most setups, it may be something you want to be aware of. Also, this reception breakout, what this is if I place a phone call to Walter, and he doesn't answer, and his voicemail picks up, but I don't want to leave him a voicemail. I want to zero out. So what that means is I get his voicemail, I press 0, and a lot of times you can point this to a receptionist. Okay? So in this case, maybe we want it to go to main. So main is the main Hunt group where we have a lot of users in there. So if I call Walter, get his voicemail box, if I press 0, it's going to ring everybody in the main Hunt group. So at that point, if that's like the receptionist desk or a group of receptionists, I can ask for another individual, maybe in Walter's department, that can help me instead of having to leave him a voicemail and then calling back. Shortcodes, we're not going to mess with any shortcodes. Button programming, by default everybody gets 3 line appearances, but a popular feature are the park slots. So let's give him some park slots. Call park. And then the data is 1. Okay? So here we have park slot 1, and we can just create him a couple of these. Oops. We'll just give him 2 slots for now. Okay? Telephony, there's a lot of settings in here. Most of them you don't need to mess with. No answer time is one that we do. Sometimes change. That's if users complain that their phone rings too many times before it goes to voicemail, we may lower this or increase this no answer time. Forwarding, we can set forwarding rules in here. We can set forwarding unconditional. That means every time a call comes in, go to this go to this phone number. But for him, we're not going to set it. You can also set twinning features. We'll enable mobile twinning. By the way, mobile twinning is a standard feature. Okay, so it's not something that requires a power user license. It comes standard, I know for sure, in 9.0. Group membership, we can see that he's part of the Hunt Group sales. A lot of these options are the same options that you're going to see inside of Manager. Okay, and there's his personal directory. We could import a directory. Let's say all of the sales group, we want them to have a standard directory, so we could have a CVS file, and we could just import it here. SIP, if you had SIP trunks on your system, this is where you would set individual caller ID. Let's skip down to web self-administration. This is where, for this user, you would enable him to go in and make changes to his personal extension. So by default, it's off, and we turned it on. So now you can see we can set each line item, we can set it as either write access or no access. So in this case, the user, I know the user option, that's where he can change his name and change his password for his apps. Let's say we want him to be able to read it, but we don't want him to be able to make changes to it. Voicemail will allow him to make changes to that. We'll allow him to make changes to do not disturb. Forwarding as well. We don't want him to make changes to buttons, but we'll let him view it. And read access for that. I'm sorry, write access for mobility and also the personal directory. Alright, so now here we have Walter White. He's at extension 2018. He's in the sales hunt group. Okay, and if we go back here, let's see, we can just log out of this for now. Say yes to that. And we'll log in back into self-admin, and I'll just show you what it's going to look like for Walter real quick. Okay, here we go. So we're logged in as Walter. These are the options Walter can view or change. You can see, as far as the profile is concerned, he can see his name, but he can't make changes here. Okay, and then these other options, he is able to change on the fly if he needs to. So twinning. So yes, he can twin. So he might want to put his 7 to dial an outside line, right? And then put in his number. This here, the system adds that plus sign. I think it's a bug. Oh, I'm sure they will fix it in the next release, or probably a patch that's coming out soon. Alright, so now, what just happened? Walter was able to come in here for mobility, and he was able to come in here, put in his cell phone number that he wants it twinned to, which is pretty powerful, right? So Walter didn't have to contact the help desk, or he didn't have to bother the PBX admin to come and make such a simple change. Walter was empowered. He was able to go and make the change himself. Forwarding, he can do the same thing here. Most of the time we set it forward unconditional, but with mobility, he's going to be set. Okay, so his phone is going to ring when he receives a call. It's going to ring at his desk. It's also going to ring on his cell phone, so he doesn't need to make a change there. Let's say Walter has a few vendors that he wants to add. He can add those here as a speed dial. There we go. So in his personal contacts, he would have that listing there. And then again, here's his buttons. So initially we only gave Walter two buttons, a Park 1 and a Park 2. However, if he we've decided that he needs the Park 3 slot, then he can add that himself. And where is it? Or did we set that to read only? I think we set that to read only. So in this case, he wouldn't be able to add that. So that's how Walter's set up. So I've shown you the self-admin tool. We've showed you the web manager. Let's see. I also want to show you how to set up the same user inside of manager, which is what a lot of admins use to make changes to their system. So we'll set up another user here. We'll just pull a config from our lab. Initially, when I pull a config, I see the name of the device that I'm pulling from. Okay. Some environments have multiple IP offices, so when you're making changes, it's really important that you see which device you're connecting to. Because if, let's say, you have a system in Dallas and you have a system in Vegas, you don't want to make the change to Vegas when you intended, for the Dallas change. You see that. We also see the IP address. We also see the chassis version. In this case, it's a V2 chassis, right? And then you see the firmware that it's on. So this is on release 9.1 with Service Pack 1. Alright, let's get a view of this here. Okay, so now we're in the same IP office as we were when we were using the web manager. But here you see the LAN 1 tab. These are the same IP, same settings that we saw at the other screen inside of web manager. And then again, you see the WAN port on the back referred to as LAN 2 here. Okay. And just as if you remember, we saw the DHCP mode as server, and yes, it is set to server. So if a PoE switch is attached to the LAN 2 port, it's handing out IPs to those phones. Okay, and one nice setting real quick is the IP office has it apply to Avaya IP phones only. So you can set DHCP to only hand out IPs to the phone. So for security reasons, if a user plugs in a PC to that segment, that network segment, it's not going to give a PC an IP address. So they wouldn't be able to pull an IP unless they manually configured their NIC on their laptop. They wouldn't be able to connect to the IP office. Alright, let's get to users here. So let's create a new user. We're also going to set this user up for the web self-administrator. So in here, I can just right-click and create new. Okay. And let's create a new user. Let's see. We'll do John. We have a new member on our team, John Nixon. Let's do John. So this name field at the top is typically a username. So in most conventions, the username is first initial, last name, and that's what we'll use here. So we'll do J Nixon. Okay. Got to give him a password. Again, that's the password for his applications. It's not the password for his phone or his voicemail. Conference pin, that's a new setting in release 9.1. We now can put individual pins on our conferences. Account status enabled. John Nixon, and let's give him extension 2019. Okay. Notice I click the drop down here and I only have the choice for basic user. This is our lab system and we only have 2 power user licenses on the system. So because I can't see power user here, I know that I've already used up or I've already allocated all of my power user licenses. So if I wanted to give John a power user license, I'd have to take it away from someone to give it to him or purchase more licensing. In this case, we'll just leave it as default. Okay. See, he has voicemail turned on. Give him a password for voicemail. There's his email address for voicemail to email. And again, we want to set his breakout to main. Remember, that is when his voicemail box comes up, I press 0, it's going to go to the main hunt group. Okay? This is the same tab as far as Do Not Disturb, and we can set exceptions in here if we need to. One tidbit that's kind of neat, on the source numbers tab, if we have a user that's part of a hunt group, and let's say that user has responsibilities for checking voicemails inside of that hunt group voicemail box and also his own voicemail box, he would need to have a message waiting indication on his phone that a message is actually in that hunt group mailbox. So let's say he's part of the sales hunt group, and we could do, so the H is for hunt group and then sales. What that does is enable the sales hunt group to give him a message waiting indicator that, hey, you have a message in the sales hunt group that you need to check. And that's what that programming does. That's on the source numbers tab inside of Manager. Anyway, let's stay on topic here. Let's go to web self-administration. This is what it looks like inside of Manager. So I can enable him here, and then I can just select the options that I want him to be able to change. Okay, I want him to be able to change everything but user, but I'll let him view it. Click OK. Oh, we got to put it in twice now. What this is hot desking. Always hot desk users. Makes it easy from an admin perspective, especially on digital phones and moving the users around. Okay, there's not a lot to it, but that's more than the scope of this guru session. But hot desking can be beneficial, especially for digital extensions. So anyway, we have John set up, has a password. We've configured his self-admin properties, and we're going to go ahead and save and merge. So when you save, you always want to make sure it's merged. If it's on immediate, you're going to reboot. We don't want to reboot, we want to merge. Alright, John's set up. John is set up. So now, we need to log out of here. Okay, so now John's set up. I've sent him maybe a week ago or so. I sent him the URL to this site, and now he's saying he needs to make changes to his setup. So we can say, hey, just go to the self-admin site and make whatever changes it is you need to make. So John can come here. Okay. And again, he has the same settings. Maybe he wanted to change his voicemail to alert instead of receive the emails. He has the ability to do that. Alright guys, we're right at 45 minutes. We kind of covered a lot of information. Some of it is, I know it's new because it's new to me, so it must be new to a lot of others as well. I don't see any other questions. Do you guys have any more questions you'd like to run by me? I think this is a neat tool. There's a question. That's right. Just to reiterate, you do need a V2 to see these options. But it might be a good investment. Might be a good investment. I think you've just experienced some of those woes with the V1. But that brings me to the next portion of this, which are announcements. If I can get this up, there it is. Guys, you can always reach out to us anytime at support@agilitycg.com. Even if it's a simple question, just shoot us an email. We'll get back to you. All of the engineers receive these emails, and we respond to them all day and night. Okay. Survey. There'll be a survey after this guru session. Take a few minutes to fill it out. Kind of lets us know how we're doing. If there's more information or specific types of information that you would rather us cover, please send that over to us, because we're always looking for ideas and topics to cover. Let's see. If you have, I see there's a question, and I'll get to you right after this, David. Free upgrades. They're for support customers. The license itself to upgrade is free. So if you're looking to upgrade, reach out to your sales rep or email us at support, and we'll get you in touch with your sales rep, and we'll get you find out. Go in, take a comprehensive look at your system, find out what it's going to take for you to upgrade. The upgrade license is free for those support customers. Agility, we're always having events. If you're ever wondering what's next, go to agility.com/events. You can get future dates and times for these guru sessions, and kind of keep you abreast of what's happening and what's coming down the pipe. Also, support contracts, we have two flavors. We have the advisor support, which is a break fix support contract. We also have extended team. Extended team is really nice. Basically, you want to redesign, you want to add something, you have some pretty heavy programming that needs to take place. Extended team is going to cover that. And either one of these scenarios or either one of these support contracts can be very valuable if you are suffering from a severe outage. And if you've experienced without a support contract, it can be a little pricey endeavor, because that equipment's not free, and we have to pay for that stuff. So it always helps to have the contract ahead of time. All right, let's see. There was a question here. Answered that one. David. Yes, I will, and I can even cover that right now real quick, David, if you want to hang out a few minutes. All right, Ralph, have a good one. Appreciate you joining. So, David had a question about hunt group creation. Sure, man. Let's take some time right now to cover it. Let's cover it inside a manager, if that works for you. So, we want to create a hunt group. Just come into groups. So, I've already pulled a config. Let me make sure I understand your full question here. Good, I got it. Okay, clear those questions. All right, so I've already pulled a config on my lab rat here on the Agility lab. Let's say I want to create a new hunt group, and we want the hunt group to be for our customer service department. Okay, so I just right-click inside this field in New. Okay, and then I create the name for the group. So there's a space limitation, so maybe I want to just call it Cuss Service, like that. Okay, I have to give it an extension, just like any other extension for a phone or a user. This needs an extension 2. We'll give it extension 201. Okay. The ring mode. So we have different types. We have collective. What that does is that will ring everybody at once. So a call comes in, it rings extension 201, and let's say I have 5 individuals that are in my hunt group. All 5 of those individuals are going to get that call at the same time. Okay? Collective call waiting is very similar, but what that does is it rings everybody at once. Okay, let's say the first person answers. Okay, so it stops ringing the other 4 individuals. But now let's say another call comes in. Well, on that first, it's still going to ring all 5 individuals, but that first person that already has a call, it's going to ring on their second line appearance as well. But what happens sometimes is we have some smaller installs or smaller groups where maybe we only have 2 members in the hunt group and they're both on a call, but they still need to be able to receive that third call. So they could put the first call on hold and they could answer their second line appearance, ask them to hold momentarily, go back, deal with the first call, and then come back to their second call that's on their phone. Sequential. What sequential is if I have a list of extensions in this group, it's going to ring the first one. After the first one, it will ring the second one, third, fourth, so on and so on. That's sequential. Rotary. Once it's made it through the list, so from user 1 down to user 3 or 4 or 5, at the last user, it's going to go back to user 1 and it's going to ring through. Longest waiting, it's going to ring the hunt group member that has been in idle for the longest period of time. Most of our hunt groups are collective call waiting. Okay. Hold music, you can have specific hold music for that. This is going to be a standard hunt group. Hunt groups, maybe you do or maybe you don't want to have it in the system directory. In this case, we'll leave it. So now we want to add users. We hit edit. And basically, we can just double click the individuals that we want to have in our group. Okay. Here we have 3 individuals that are going to be in our customer service hunt group. And basically, that's the basic creation of a hunt group. There's not much more to it than that. We can go in here, we can set up queuing. This is like how many calls can queue in before it's presented to the different individuals in the group. We can also set overflow. So maybe everybody in our hunt group is actively on a call. So we may want to create a customer service overflow hunt group to where it overflows to the managers of customer service. So those calls always get answered. Fallback, you can set the hunt group in service, which means it's actively taking calls. But maybe at night you want to set it in night mode. So when calls come into the customer service desk, they don't ring those extensions. What actually happens is it gets passed over into Voicemail Pro, and at that point it's going through an auto attendant which says, hey, thank you for calling so and so company. Our office hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you've reached us after hours, press 1 if this is an urgent call. Press 2 to leave a message in our voicemail box, something along those lines. That would be an example of night service. Out of service, very similar to night service. A lot of times we use this during the day. We can create a button on any of those hunt groups individuals. They can press a button on their phone, put it in out of service. Maybe they're having an extended lunch, or maybe it's holiday early out, and they want to deactivate that group like that. Here's the hunt group voicemail. So here we can turn on or turn off voicemail box for this specific hunt group. So all of those members could check voicemail messages in this group. And if they have that programming in which I showed you earlier on the I forgot the name of the tab. On that tab where it would say H cuss service, okay, they would get the message waiting indicator that there is a message in the voicemail box, and so they would know to go check it. So a lot of times if this is active, they forget to check it unless there's indication to do so. And a lot of times we don't mess with those settings there. So now that I've created that hunt group, if I want calls to go directly to it from the outside, I can come to my incoming call routes, select an incoming call route, and I can point it to the 201 customer service. So incoming calls coming in on this number are going to ring that customer service hunt group. Again, save and merge. We very rarely want to reboot. And it's active. So now calls to this number are going to ring. These individuals, and it's going to ring them all at once because it's a collective ring mode. And if I have 3 calls and all 3 of these users are on the phone, because it's call waiting, the 4th call will show up on their 2nd call appearance on their phone. That's basic hunt group creation. I hope that answered it. Good deal. Alright guys, I think that's all the questions. So if that's it, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But if you think of some questions down the road, just shoot us an email at the support@agilitycg.com, and we'll make sure that we get those answered for you. All right, hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you.